I never thought I'd be the guy whose marriage ended because of a burner Instagram account. I mean, who even uses those anymore? But here I am, sitting in my car, reeling from the discovery that my wife, Jessica, has been cheating on me. I never saw it coming, and now it's all I can think about. Let me take you back a few months. Jessica and I had been married for 4 years. On paper, we were the perfect couple. We had a nice house in the suburbs of Denver, both of us had solid jobs, and we shared a love for hiking and weekend getaways. But in hindsight, there were signs. I brushed them off as normal marital bumps. Jess had been a little distant lately. She'd cancel plans last minute, spend more time on her phone, and sometimes I'd catch her staring off into space, lost in thought. When I asked her what was going on, she always had some excuse: work stress, needing time alone, or just being tired. But I was an idiot. I wanted to believe her. I thought that our bond was strong enough to weather any storm. I didn't want to think my wife could be capable of something so deceitful. The first real crack in my world came one Saturday when I decided to surprise Jessica with a day trip to the mountains. I'd packed a picnic, loaded up the car, and was ready to whisk her away for a day of nature and romance. But when I got home, she was in the shower, but I heard her phone buzzing in the living room. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked it up to silence the incessant notifications. I saw a name I didn't recognize: Jake. Jake? Who was Jake? I hesitated at first, but something compelled me to unlock her phone. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. There it was, dozens of DMs filled with flirty messages, heart emojis, and plans that were clearly not meant for my eyes. My stomach sank. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I flipped through the messages, and the more I read, the more my heart raced. It was clear to me that my wife was in the middle of an affair. The final blow came when I stumbled upon a series of pictures, selfies of Jessica in various outfits, but the ones that hurt the most were the ones of her and Jake together, laughing with her arms wrapped around him. The captions made my blood boil. Best weekend ever. Blessed. In that moment, everything hit me like a freight train. I put the phone back down and sat on the couch, feeling a storm of emotions swirl inside me. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. I felt them all crashing over me like waves. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But mostly, I wanted answers. When she emerged from the shower, I confronted her right then and there. I asked her about Jake. At first, she played dumb, insisting she had no idea what I was talking about, but I could see the panic in her eyes. I pressed further, showing her the messages. She went pale, and for the first time, the confident woman I married crumbled before me. In her defense, she resorted to the classic blame game. "I was just looking for attention. You never pay attention to me anymore," she shouted, her voice rising. "You're always busy with work." It was infuriating. I never cheated on her. I never even thought about it. The emotional toll of that moment was something I can't describe. It felt like my whole world had just collapsed. The woman I loved, who I thought was my partner, was nothing more than a stranger trying to justify her betrayal. I felt my heart shatter as the reality of her words seeped in. The love I had for her twisted into something dark and bitter. I could feel anger bubbling within me, but I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. I needed to think clearly about the next steps. This couldn't be the end of our story. I loved her. But as the anger settled, I realized I had to decide how to move forward. I needed to process this betrayal before figuring out whether I could forgive her or if it was time to cut my losses. This was only the beginning of my journey into the emotional chaos that would follow. I had so many unanswered questions and a burning desire for revenge. How could she do this to me? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? I was about to enter a dark chapter of my life, and the twists ahead would change everything. After that fateful confrontation, I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying every moment in my mind. I felt trapped in a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, sadness. Jessica had pleaded with me to give her another chance, promising it was a mistake, that she was just lost and needed direction. But how could I trust her after seeing the intimate messages and photos? The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. Days turned into a blur as I tried to process everything. I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't focus on anything but the reality that my marriage was crumbling. I found myself scrolling through social media, searching for any clues that might give me insight into Jessica's affair. I had never been one to snoop, but desperation made me do things I never thought I'd do. I discovered that her burner Instagram account was filled with pictures of her and Jake, along with captions that dripped with affection. They were out in public, laughing and living their best lives while I was at home, completely oblivious. Each screenshot I saved felt like a dagger in my heart. I wanted to confront her with this evidence, but I also felt this strange, twisted sense of power in knowing things she thought I didn't. I began to formulate a plan, a strategy to expose her and make her realize what she had lost. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my sense of self. I wouldn't let her get away with this without understanding the weight of her actions. A week passed, and our home felt like a battleground. We barely spoke. Every conversation was laced with tension, and I could feel the gap between us widening. I'd catch her sneaking glances at her phone only to look away when I entered the room. I could sense her guilt, and it infuriated me. She tried to act as if everything was normal, but I could see the cracks in her facade. Finally, I decided to confront her again. It was a Friday evening, and I knew she'd be home from work early. I had spent the day gathering all the evidence, screenshots, photos, messages, and I was ready. As she entered the house, I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. "Jess, we need to talk," I said. My voice steady but laced with anger. She looked taken aback, almost like a deer caught in headlights. "What about?" she asked, trying to act innocent. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the damning evidence. "This," I said, showing her the burner Instagram account. "You think I wouldn't find out? You think I'm some fool who believes your lies?" Her expression shifted from surprise to defensive. "You don't understand. It didn't mean anything. I was just trying to find myself. You're always working, and I felt alone." "Alone?" I shot back. "You found comfort in another man's arms. You shared intimate moments with him, pictures. You were living a double life. How could you say it didn't mean anything?" The fight escalated, with both of us raising our voices, hurling accusations and defenses. She claimed that I had pushed her away, that I hadn't been there when she needed me the most. But I wasn't ready to accept that. I had devoted myself to her, and now I was standing there feeling like a fool. In the midst of our shouting match, a realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't just want revenge. I needed to confront her deception in a way that would make her feel the depth of her actions. As she continued to argue, I let her words wash over me. I wasn't going to beg her to stay or try to fix our marriage. I was done being a passive participant in my own life. "Here's the deal, Jess," I said, interjecting her rant. "I'm not going to let you manipulate me into believing this is my fault. I'm done. You need to face the consequences of your actions. I want you to feel this loss. I want you to see what you've thrown away." Her eyes widened, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm going to tell everyone," I declared. "I'm going to expose you for what you are, a cheater who thought she could have the best of both worlds. You need to feel the shame of what you've done." In that moment, I saw panic seep into her features. She tried to plead with me, promising to change, that she'd do anything to make it right, but the anger that had been building inside me had morphed into something more powerful: determination. I wouldn't let her walk away without facing the repercussions. As she broke down in front of me, the emotional turmoil shifted. I could see the weight of her betrayal crushing her, and for the first time I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was taking control. This wasn't about revenge per se. It was about reclaiming my dignity and strength. The decision had been made. I would execute my plan, and I wouldn't look back. I had no idea how this would all end or what consequences would await, but one thing was for sure: I was ready to expose the truth. And as I watched her sob in front of me, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, this experience would ultimately lead me to a better path. After that confrontation, I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Part of me felt empowered, driven by a newfound sense of agency. But another part wrestled with the grim reality that my marriage was hanging by a thread. I spent the entire night drafting a message that would expose Jessica for what she truly was. In my mind, The idea of telling our friends and family was both terrifying and exhilarating. Did I really want to go through with it? The next morning I woke early, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. I knew I had to come up with a solid plan to execute my intentions without letting emotions cloud my judgment. I decided to start small. I drafted a post for Facebook, detailing my truth without being overly dramatic. I wanted to keep it factual, but I also wanted to ensure that it cut deep. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop for what felt like hours, contemplating how to write it. Finally, I found the right words. I've kept quiet for too long while my wife betrayed my trust in our marriage. She's been cheating on me with a man named Jake. If you see her out there pretending everything is fine, know that it's not. I was shaking as I hit the post button, watching the words vanish into the void of social media. The immediate aftermath was intense. I felt an odd mix of relief and anxiety. My truth was out there, but I wondered how my friends would react. Would they support me, or would they turn against me, siding with Jessica? Just as I began to ponder the consequences, my phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. People were responding. Some reached out privately to offer support, while others commented publicly, expressing their disbelief and shock. My phone was lighting up like a Christmas tree. I felt a rush of validation, and with each supportive message I felt stronger. Jessica, on the other hand, was fuming. She stormed into the house later that afternoon, her face flushed. "What the hell did you do?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls. "You can't just air our dirty laundry like that." I stood my ground, feeling that sense of power wash over me again. "You did this to yourself, Jess. You chose to cheat on me. I'm just making sure everyone knows who you really are." She attempted to reason with me, insisting that I was making a huge mistake. She claimed that I was ruining her life, that I was being vindictive. I almost felt pity for her, but the anger I felt was far more powerful. She had betrayed me, and now she had to face the consequences. "I'm not ruining anything," I replied sharply. "You did that all by yourself. You wanted excitement outside our marriage, and now you'll have to deal with the fallout." Her responses veered from anger to desperation. "I'll change. I'll do anything. Just please don't do this." But it was too late. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand the depth of the betrayal. I was taking back my power, and I couldn't let her manipulate me into feeling guilty. The days that followed were a whirlwind. My friends rallied around me, offering support and comforting words. I found solace in their kindness, and their disbelief over Jessica's actions fueled my determination. Slowly, I began to sift through the wreckage of our marriage. I talked to a few close friends, sharing my story, and they helped me see the bigger picture. One evening, I went out for drinks with my buddy Dave. We sat at a bar, drowning our sorrows in whiskey while dissecting everything that had happened. "You know, man," he said, leaning back in his chair, "it's easy to blame yourself in these situations, but you need to remember that you're not the one who broke the vows." His words struck a chord. I had been wrestling with feelings of inadequacy, even guilt for not being a better husband. But the truth was, I had been a good husband. I had loved Jessica, supported her, and stood by her through thick and thin. It was her who had chosen to betray me. Dave and I talked more, and I started to formulate a plan for my next steps. I had to protect myself and focus on healing. I realized that revenge wouldn't fill the void left by Jessica's betrayal, but it would give me the closure I needed. I had to let this chapter of my life end before starting anew. The fallout continued, and Jessica's anger at me turned into a campaign of manipulation. She started reaching out to our friends, spinning a narrative that painted me as the villain. "I was just trying to figure myself out," she would say. He was never supportive. I couldn't believe it. She was still trying to twist the story even after everything had come to light. But here's the thing, many of our friends saw through her lies. They had witnessed our relationship, knew the good times we shared, and recognized the love we had. I felt grateful for their unwavering support. I started to gain momentum, feeling stronger with each passing day. Then one night, I decided it was time to confront Jake. I needed him to know what he had done and how he had ruined my life. I wasn't going to sit back while he continued to weave himself into Jessica's life. I found him on social media and sent him a message, laying out the truth of my situation. I told him I wanted to meet. When he agreed, a wave of nerves washed over me. Would he stand up for Jessica, or would he at least take some responsibility for the role he played? I had no idea what to expect, but the next day I found myself standing in front of a coffee shop, waiting to face the man who had taken my wife from me. This confrontation could either solidify my resolve or send me spiraling back into despair. I took a deep breath, prepared for whatever was to come. I was ready to confront Jake, and I wouldn't back down. As I sat in the coffee shop, my heart raced with anticipation and anxiety. I scanned the room looking for Jake. I had every intention of confronting him, but I wasn't sure how this would unfold. Would he be arrogant? Would he show remorse? I had rehearsed a million scenarios in my head, but nothing could prepare me for the moment he walked through the door. Jake was everything I had imagined. Tall, athletic, with an easy smile that seemed like it could charm anyone. But to me, he was a fraud, a man who had crossed boundaries that should never have been touched. He spotted me immediately, and I could see the flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Hey man," he said, feigning a casual tone as he approached. "Thanks for agreeing to meet up." I forced a smile but didn't offer my hand. "Let's just get to the point. You know why we're here." He took a seat, glancing around as if hoping someone would come to my rescue. "Look, I didn't mean for things to get out of hand, Jess, and I never planned for it to go this far." His words were infuriating. "You realize that you were sleeping with a married woman, right? You were a part of a betrayal that destroyed my life." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I know, I genuinely regret it. Jess said you two were having problems, and I didn't think." "Didn't think what?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "Didn't think she was worth respecting. Did you never stop to consider the damage you were doing? You knew she was married. You knew she had a life with someone else." He squirmed as I continued. "You think that because she was unhappy it somehow justified your actions. You're just as guilty as she is. You chose to step in, and you don't get to play the victim here." Jake opened his mouth to respond, but I raised my hand to stop him. "I wasn't here for an apology. I was here to make a statement. I want you to understand the pain you've caused. You think this is just a game, a fling. You have no idea what it's like to have your heart ripped out. You've disrupted my life and my marriage." He looked down, guilt washing over his features, but I wasn't done. "You may see her as fun and exciting, but you're just a side character in her drama. She's manipulating you just like she manipulated me." The conversation shifted as I urged him to see the bigger picture. I told him how Jessica had been distant, how I had tried to reach out but was met with silence. I didn't want him to see me as just a hurt husband. I wanted him to understand the full scope of the damage he had contributed to. "You need to step away from this. The thrill will wear off, and when it does, you'll be left with a mess that you can't even begin to clean up. She'll do the same thing to you that she did to me. You'll be just another notch on her belt." He sat there, absorbing everything I said, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of realization cross his face. "I didn't know," he murmured. "I thought we had something special. I didn't want to hurt you." "Then step away before it's too late." I leaned in, my voice low and firm. "If you care at all, cut ties with her. She's toxic, and the last thing you need is to get pulled into the mess she's created." The minutes passed as we sat in silence, Jake contemplating his choices. I didn't want to be the one to dictate his actions, but I felt a sense of satisfaction pushing him to consider the consequences of his involvement with Jessica. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and forcing the people who hurt me to acknowledge their roles. Finally, Jake broke the silence. "I'll think about it," he said, his voice quieter now. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "Good," I replied, standing up to leave. "You think about it long and hard, because I guarantee you Jess will try to pull you back in with her charm and lies. Don't fall for it." As I left the coffee shop, I felt lighter. Confronting Jake had been surreal, but it also felt like a pivotal moment in my journey. I had stood up for myself, asserting my worth and refusing to let either of them manipulate my life any longer. The confrontation didn't magically fix everything, but it was a necessary step. I returned home, and as I entered, I was met with silence. Jessica wasn't home yet, but I could sense the tension lingering in the air. I knew she was probably panicking, wondering what I had said to Jake and how it would affect her. That evening she came home, her expression unreadable. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice laced with feigned innocence. "Better than expected," I replied, trying to gauge her reaction. "I told him to leave you alone, it might have gotten through to him." Her face paled slightly and I could tell she was trying to hold herself together. "That's not fair, you can't tell him what to do." "Why not? You didn't care about fairness when you decided to cheat on me," I shot back. "You don't get to play the victim here." Our confrontation ignited again, escalating into a heated argument. I laid out everything I had told Jake, and with every word I could see Jessica's world crumbling further. Her excuses fell flat and her anger turned into desperation. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Let's just work on us. I made a mistake. I need you to forgive me." "Forgiveness is earned, Jess," I replied, my tone cold and resolute. "You don't get to just brush this off as a mistake. You've shattered my trust and I won't forget that easily." As I spoke, I felt a sense of resolve solidify within me. I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. This had changed me and I needed to prioritize my own healing. I wouldn't let her manipulate my feelings any longer. The next few days were tense. I focused on myself, surrounded by friends who lifted my spirits. I started to explore new hobbies, rediscovering parts of myself that had been lost in the chaos of our marriage. I went for runs, tried cooking new recipes, and even started journaling to sort through my emotions. Jessica continued to reach out, trying to engage me in conversations about our future, but I was firm. I made it clear that I wasn't ready to reconcile. I wouldn't let her back into my life until I was certain she understood the weight of what she had done. Time passed, and as I immersed myself in rebuilding my life, I felt a sense of liberation. The anger was still there, but it was slowly morphing into clarity. I was learning about boundaries, self-respect, and the importance of prioritizing my well-being. I realized that while this experience had been painful, it was also an opportunity for growth. But I knew there was one final confrontation that awaited me. It was time to meet with our friends and share my side of the story. I had to own my truth and let them know how Jessica's choices impacted me. I was ready to face the next chapter, no longer defined by her betrayal but empowered by my own resilience. The day I had been dreading, yet anticipating, finally arrived. I had decided to host a small gathering at my place with a few close friends. I knew they had been hearing Jessica's side of the story, and I needed to present my truth. It was crucial for me to reclaim my narrative and ensure that I was not painted as the villain she had tried to make me out to be. As I prepared for the evening, a mix of nerves and determination bubbled within me. I cleaned the house, set up the drinks, and ordered some pizza. I wanted a relaxed atmosphere, a setting where I could speak openly without the pressure of a formal confrontation. The doorbell rang and I greeted my friends Dave, Sarah, and Mike with a forced smile, though deep down I was anxious about how they would react. "Hey man, nice place you got here," Dave said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You good?" "Yeah, I'm all right," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Thanks for coming, guys, I really appreciate it." As the evening rolled on, we settled into our usual banter, reminiscing about old times. I felt comforted by their presence, but something was still gnawing at me: how to bring the conversation around to what had been happening in my life. Eventually, as we sat around the coffee table, I took a deep breath. "So I wanted to talk to you all about something serious," I began, my voice steady yet heavy with emotion. "I know you've all heard a lot from Jess about the whole situation, and I think it's time I share my side." The room fell silent as they shifted their attention to me. I could see concern etched on their faces, but there was also a sense of curiosity. "Let's hear it," Mike said, leaning forward. I started from the beginning, recounting the signs I had ignored and how I discovered Jessica's infidelity. With each word, I felt the weight of my pain being lifted, as if I was finally shedding the shame she had tried to place on me. I described the conversations we had, the way she had manipulated the narrative, and how I felt blindsided by her betrayal. It was like living in a horror movie, watching someone you love morph into a stranger overnight, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I thought we were happy, but apparently I was the last to know. The reactions came swiftly. Dave's expression turned serious, while Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. "I can't believe she would do that," Sarah said softly. "You didn't deserve any of this." I continued to share the details, including my confrontation with Jake. I wanted him to understand the impact of what he did. I told him he needed to leave her alone, that she was toxic and would do the same to him. I wanted him to see that he was just a pawn in her game. They listened intently, and I could see their loyalty shifting toward me. I felt a sense of relief washing over me. I was no longer carrying the burden of this betrayal alone. I was sharing it with those who cared about me. After I finished recounting my story, the room fell into a contemplative silence. "Wow, man," Dave finally said, shaking his head. "I had no idea it was that bad. You're handling this with way more grace than I could." "Thanks, but it doesn't feel graceful," I replied, forcing a smile. "I feel like I'm just stumbling through it all, trying to find my footing again." Sarah chimed in, her voice gentle. "You need to know that this isn't your fault. You did everything you could to make your marriage work. Jess made her choices." As they spoke, a newfound sense of validation surged through me. I had been fighting against the narrative Jessica had been pushing, and now, surrounded by friends who understood my pain, I felt empowered. "Do you think she'll try to come back?" Mike asked, tilting his head in thought. I sighed, considering the question. "Honestly, I don't know. Part of me thinks she might, especially when the reality of her actions starts to sink in. But I don't want to be her safety net anymore. I don't want to feel like I'm a consolation prize." The conversation shifted to what I wanted moving forward. "I think I need time away from her," I admitted. "I need to focus on healing and rediscovering who I am without her. Maybe even dating again one day, but I'm not ready for that yet." With each word, I felt more liberated. I had taken control of my narrative, and it felt empowering to share my truth with those who genuinely cared. My friends offered their unwavering support, and as the night wore on, laughter and camaraderie filled the room, momentarily pushing the pain away. After my friends left, I felt exhausted yet lighter. I had finally spoken my truth, and it felt like a turning point in my healing journey. I spent the next few days reflecting on my life, considering what I wanted for my future. I knew I had a long road ahead, but I felt ready to embrace the next chapter. But even as I reclaimed my narrative, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica would try to worm her way back into my life. I had to stay vigilant, reminding myself of the betrayal and the pain she had caused. I needed to be strong enough to resist the temptation of going back to the comfort of what we once had. Little did I know that just when I thought I had closed the door on that chapter, a message would come through that would throw my resolve into chaos. As I logged into my social media, my heart raced when I saw a notification from Jessica, a friend request from her new account. I couldn't help but wonder what she wanted now. The moment I saw Jessica's friend request pop up on my screen, a wave of mixed emotions flooded over me. Part of me felt anger and betrayal all over again, while another part was gripped by curiosity. Why was she reaching out now? What did she have to say after everything that had happened? I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. It had been a couple of weeks since the big fallout, and in that time I had focused on my healing. I learned to navigate life without the constant fog of her betrayal hanging over me. But now, it felt like all that progress was threatened by a simple click. I hesitated but ultimately decided to deny her request. I knew it was the right thing to do. I didn't want to be sucked back into the chaos she brought into my life. I had spent years trying to build a life with her, only to have it dismantled in a matter of months, and I wasn't about to let her back in. But then, just as I was about to log off, a message notification popped up. It was from her. I felt my heart race as I opened it, half expecting a barrage of apologies or justifications. Instead, her words were carefully crafted, almost calculated. "Hey, I know things got messy between us and I messed up. I've been doing a lot of thinking and I realize how much I took you for granted. I really want to talk. Can we meet?" My first instinct was to ignore her, to chalk it up to yet another attempt at manipulation. But the lingering curiosity got the better of me. I remembered the conversations with my friends and how far I had come in reclaiming my narrative. This could be an opportunity to have a final confrontation, to lay everything out on the table once and for all. So I replied, "Fine, we can talk. But it's not to rekindle anything. I just want closure." I set a date for later that week at a cafe we used to frequent, my heart pounding at the thought of seeing her again. The day finally came, and I arrived at the cafe early, my mind racing with what we would discuss. Would she try to manipulate me again? Would she actually show remorse? As I waited, I felt more resolute than ever. This was about me reclaiming my power one last time. When she walked in, I was taken aback by how different she looked. The usual confidence she carried seemed diminished, and there was a vulnerability in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. For a moment I almost felt a pang of sympathy, but I quickly pushed it aside. "Thanks for meeting me," she began, her voice shaky. "I've needed to talk to you." "Let's cut to the chase, Jess. You wanted to talk. What do you have to say?" I replied, not wanting to waste any time. "I know I hurt you deeply, and I can't take that back. I've been reflecting on my actions, and I realize how selfish I was. I want you to know that I'm truly sorry," she said, her eyes pleading. I listened, but I was guarded. "You say you're sorry, but sorry doesn't fix what you did. You shattered our marriage and betrayed my trust. Why should I believe you now?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a second I wondered if she was being genuine. "Because I've been working on myself. I'm going to therapy and trying to figure out why I let things get so out of hand. I just want you to know that I've changed." Changed. I snapped, anger bubbling up again. "You think a few therapy sessions erase years of deceit. You used another man to fill a void you created. You don't get to act like you care about me now." The conversation escalated, and I could see the frustration growing in her. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to understand that I'm not the same person I was when this all happened. I'm working to be better, not just for myself but for those around me. I want to take responsibility for my actions." "You should have thought about that before you cheated," I retorted. "You had a choice, Jess. You made it, and now I'm living with the consequences." For every excuse she tried to offer, I countered with the reality of what had happened. I was done being the understanding husband, the man who would listen to her pleas. I stood firm, making it clear that the trust was irreparably broken. "I don't want to hate you," she finally said, her voice a whisper. "But I can't expect you to just forgive me. I just wanted to tell you that I regret everything. You deserved so much better." As I looked into her eyes, I felt emptiness rather than anger. I realized I had reached a point where her apologies no longer held power over me. The woman I had once loved had become a stranger, and I was no longer tethered to the pain she had caused. "I appreciate your honesty, but I can't have you in my life anymore. I need to focus on my healing, and for that to happen, I need to let you go," I said, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. I just hope you find happiness, even if it's without me." "I will," I replied, my voice steady. "I'll be okay. I'm taking control of my life again, and I won't let anyone take that from me." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history hanging heavy in the air. I knew this was the last time we would meet, a final chapter closing on a painful story. As I walked away from the cafe, I felt a surge of liberation. I was reclaiming my life, my happiness, and my future. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time I felt hopeful. I was ready to rebuild, to rediscover myself outside of the pain, and to embrace whatever came next. The lessons I learned through this experience would stay with me forever. I learned the importance of self-respect, the reality of trusting my instincts, and the need to prioritize my well-being over anything else. Jessica's betrayal had broken me, but it had also forged a stronger, more resilient version of myself. As I moved forward, I carried the scars with me, but I didn't let them define me. I was ready for new beginnings and the promise of a brighter future, free from the shadows of the past.